Hey, what's up everyone, and in this video I have this small Lenovo desktop computer. So this computer is an office configuration, small and compact, and the computer has a good specs, like the Intel i5 13th generation, 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, and 512 gigs M.2 SSD. But the problem is, this machine is not very upgradable. If you take a look at the motherboard, there are no additional slots, like the PCI Express slot to connect GPU or anything else. I got a request to transform this computer into some sort of gaming one, but for the cheapest as possible. In a short time, I found some components that I need, like a new power supply, a new motherboard, a new GPU, a cooling fan, and a cheap but good PC case. After I collect all the parts that I need, I start by taking out some parts from the Lenovo, like the CPU, the RAM, and the M.2 disk. Carefully, I took all the parts, because later this Lenovo will be put in function again, but with weaker components, and out for office use. This is i5 13th generation. The i5 13th generation is a pretty decent CPU. The 16 gigs of RAM can be used, and the M.2 disk is okay as well. Also, all these parts were literally in use, so practically these components are new. After I took out the CPU, the RAM, and the M.2 disk, I moved to a small cleaning process. I removed the old thermal paste from the CPU, and I cleaned the RAM and the disk. After I finish with cleaning, it's time to build up this computer. And first, I will start with the motherboard. The motherboard is ASUS B660M-A D4. This is a budget but good motherboard. Supports 12th and 13th generation Intel CPUs and has max 128GB DDR4 RAM support. And as cooling fan, we have Arctic Freezer i35. The both parts, any part here, are bought with a much lower price, because the parts were already unpacked and unsealed, and these parts were probably displayed on shelves behind glass, like for commercial display or anything else. The motherboard has a minor dust around, but it's never used, just displayed somewhere. The other parts from the motherboard, like the I/O shield, the SATA cables, and anything else, are still sealed. And the only thing that I don't like here is the CMOS battery. The CMOS battery is not on the motherboard as used to be to the older motherboards, and I must say that I'm a little bit disappointed by the quality of the newer generation motherboards and some other hardware. Here, first I'm going to place the CPU, because to protect the CPU socket, and then we're gonna move to M.2 disk, cooling, RAM, and other things. After I place the CPU, I move to the SSD. The SSD slot has no dedicated screws. Dedicated screws for the SSD. And here, the cover at the same time is serving as the cooling and to hold the SSD in the slot. This could be done a little bit in a different way, but in general it's okay. After I brush the motherboard and check for some additional dust, it's time to place the cooling fan. And here I have Arctic Freezer i35. In the box we have just the standard things, the cooling fan together with a backplate, thermal paste and other stuff. This cooling fan is super easy to mount, and if you miss something here, the backplate won't fit on the back side of the motherboard, so easily you will know if something is wrong. Between the metal rail mounts and the motherboard are small plastic stands and screws on the top, very simple. The front side of the cooling must be removed because of the screws in the bottom side. This is an easy task as well. Also, this is great because later when the cooling fan got some dust, it's going to be easy to remove and clean the dust. Instead of using the thermal paste that comes with the cooling, I will go with thermal grizzly. I always prefer using some better thermal paste with a better hardware. This computer will serve to play games, so it's better to have something good on the CPU. I apply a very thin layer of thermal paste over the top of the CPU. And then I add a single drop in the middle. This drop is to avoid any air pockets or air bubbles that may appear later at higher temperatures. And I cover the whole CPU because of better transmission of the temperatures between the CPU and the heatsink. In this case, the heatsink has a larger area, and it's better everything to be covered. After I apply a thermal paste, I mount the heatsink. Now I place the RAM, and the motherboard is ready. I know that things will be much better with some other RAM, but for now, this is the budget of this computer. 16 gigs is not bad at all, and it's enough to play most of the games. In the end, I packed all the stuff that was left in the boxes. I always return the stuff that is left, because later the owner may find use for this stuff. The cooling from Lenovo, I clean it and I warp it in a protective foil, and then I place it in the box of the new cooling, so anything is well protected and ready for the next use. Now I move to the PC case and the power supply. The PC case is MS Armor V700. Maybe for the first time you will see this brand or the case, but this is a budget PC case that looks pretty good, but also is good for the price. The PC case has a 4 RGB cooling fans with an independent controller and dedicated button for changing colors. 3 cooling fans are at the front side and 1 at the back side. The case has a glass window to one side, I mean real glass. But the only problem is that the case has a very little space for cable management. The case also has a magnetic filter on the top side and a classic mesh under the power supply. The both can be easily removed and washed. The power supply is MS brand as well. It's a budget power supply, but not bad for some mid-level PCs. Now, I start with mounting the power supply and making some basic cable management. I had to do some basic cable management because later I won't be able to connect the cables to the motherboard because of lack of space. Also on the PC case I had to move some of the motherboard standoffs and add a few more. Before I place the motherboard, while connecting some cables in a tight PC case, I always use a foam to protect the motherboard, because from below are the metal standoffs, and that can cause damage to the motherboard. After I mount the motherboard, I continue with the further cable management and connecting the other cables. The GPU is going to be NVIDIA RTX 460 with 8 gigs GDDR6 memory. This is a small but powerful graphic card. Compared to the others, the RTX 460 is slightly better than the RTX 2070 Super, but when the 2070 Super was released, the price was about twice more compared to the RTX 460. Nowadays, most PC games are keeping at the same level of performance and graphics as the game that were released 4, 5 or 6 years ago. Okay, yes, some games have better requirements, but these nowadays become rare. Now I continue with connecting other cables and making some okay cable management. In the end, I pack all the things from the PC case and the GPU into the box of the GPU. Now, I install Windows and I continue with more testing. Before I give this computer back, I want to be sure that everything is going as needs to be and that everything is good. And this is the final result. Now let's take a closer look. On this machine I installed Windows 11, and as well I had enough time to download one game only. I mean, sometimes I did more game tests. I played Dead Island 2. I used mixed settings, but mostly maximum settings, and this game is running just well. The frame rate is about 90 to 100 and very often goes over 100. Also, about this game, I must say that this is a super hard game to play. I mean, it's hard for me. The zombies are popping out of nowhere, and you need to be constantly on the run, searching for stuff to improve the in-game weapons, tools and more. Actually, the game is super fun, but also super hard to play. Maybe you will ask, Why do I do these gaming tests on a new PC? I do it because I just want to be sure that a PC is good, the hardware is working properly, the temperatures are fine and everything else. And in the end, this is an electronic device and something may not be okay. So to avoid anything of that, it's better to test it. And also, I don't want to disappoint a person who's gonna get and use this computer. In the end, again, I reinstall the Windows. I have done all the settings, I check the computer for the final time, I do some basic dusting off, I clean the PC case, and I pack the computer in the box. Also, I didn't remove the protection foil and all because I always leave that moment and the feeling when you unwrap something new for the owner. And finally, this computer is ready to make someone's day. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this video and I hope this video will give ideas and inspiration to make something different. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video.